Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild story, please hit that subscribe button to join our channel and stay updated with more crazy workplace tales like this one. It was a typical Monday at the office, the kind where the coffee machine is your best friend. I'd been working tirelessly on a deal with our biggest client, Apex Industries, for months. My senior manager, Greg, knew how much this account meant to me and the company. I'd poured my heart into every email, every pitch, every late-night strategy session. Apex was my baby, and closing this deal would have been my career-defining moment. Greg always smiled and nodded when I updated him, but his eyes had this glint I couldn't quite place. That morning, he casually suggested we take Apex's CEO, Laura, to lunch. Team effort, he said, clapping my shoulder a bit too hard. I didn't think much of it. Greg was my boss, after all. The restaurant was upscale, all glass and chrome, with waiters who hovered like hawks. Laura seemed impressed, laughing at Greg's jokes while I ran through my pitch. I thought we were nailing it, a perfect tag team. But as the appetizers arrived, Greg's tone shifted. He started talking over me, steering the conversation away from my points. At first, I brushed it off as Greg being his usual domineering self. He loved the spotlight, always had. But then he began presenting my ideas as his own, word for word. I'd spent weeks crafting that strategy, and now he was claiming it like he'd dreamed it up over coffee. Laura was nodding, her eyes locked on him, not me. I tried to interject, but Greg cut me off with a laugh, saying, "He's eager, isn't he?" The table chuckled, and I felt my face burn. My notes sat untouched in front of me, a useless stack of paper. I sipped my water, trying to keep cool, but my pulse was racing. Greg was rewriting history in real time, erasing my months of work. By the time the main course arrived, he was pitching himself as the sole point of contact for Apex. Laura didn't even glance my way anymore. I was invisible, a ghost at my own deal. The betrayal stung, sharp and cold, like a knife in my gut. Lunch dragged on, each minute a fresh twist of that knife. Greg was in full performance mode, charming Laura with stories I'd never heard. I stared at my plate, pushing food around, my appetite gone. He mentioned a new direction for Apex that I'd never discussed with him. It was my plan, down to the smallest detail, but he delivered it with such confidence. Laura was eating it up, asking follow-up questions that Greg answered effortlessly. I wanted to scream, to call him out right there, but I was frozen. What could I say without looking unprofessional? The waiter refilled my glass, and I caught his sympathetic glance. Even he could tell I was being sidelined. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe. In the mirror, I saw my clenched jaw, my eyes burning with frustration. I splashed water on my face, trying to calm down. This wasn't just about the client, it was my reputation, my future. Back at the table, things got worse. Greg was now promising Laura things I hadn't even finalized yet. He was overcommitting, setting us up for failure, all to look like the hero. I tried to steer the conversation back, mentioning a key detail about Apex's needs. Greg shot me a look, sharp, warning me to stay quiet. Laura didn't notice, too busy laughing at another of his anecdotes. I felt like I was watching my career unravel in slow motion. Every time I opened my mouth, Greg redirected the conversation. It was deliberate, calculated. He wasn't just stealing my ideas, he was stealing my client, my moment. The lunch ended with Laura shaking Greg's hand, saying she looked forward to working with him. I got a polite nod, nothing more. We walked back to the office in silence, Greg humming to himself, satisfied. I was seething, my fists clenched in my pockets. Back at the office, I couldn't focus. My desk was a mess of notes and contracts for Apex, now meaningless. Greg strolled by, whistling, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, but he was already in a meeting. I sat there, staring at my screen, replaying the lunch in my head. Every word, every smirk, Every stolen idea burned into my memory. I opened my email and saw a new message from Laura. My heart leapt, hoping she'd mention me. Instead, it was addressed to Greg, thanking him for a brilliant lunch and confirming him as her contact. I wasn't even copied on it. The room spun for a moment. This wasn't just a slight, it was sabotage. I'd worked too hard, given too much, to let this slide. I needed to do something, anything, to take back control. I spent the afternoon pacing my cubicle, weighing my options. Confronting Greg directly might backfire. He was my boss, after all. Going to HR seemed pointless. They'd side with the senior manager over me. I thought about emailing Laura to clarify my role, but that felt desperate. My mind kept circling back to one thing. I had to make a statement, something bold. Greg thought he could erase me, but I wasn't invisible. I remembered a story from a colleague about a manager who got caught stealing credit. They'd handled it quietly, but I wasn't in the mood for quiet. I wanted everyone to know what Greg had done. The office was buzzing with the usual post-lunch chatter, but I felt like I was in a bubble. My anger was a live wire, sparking with every thought of Greg's smug face. I needed a plan, something that would hit him where it hurt. That's when the idea hit me: security. Our office had a strict policy about unauthorized access to client data. Greg had taken my client, but he'd also accessed my files without permission to pull off his stunt. I'd shared my Apex strategy with him in confidence, expecting teamwork, not theft. If I could prove he'd crossed a line, I could turn this around. I checked my computer, pulling up the access logs for my files. Sure enough, Greg's ID showed up, time-stamped late last night. He'd gone through my work after hours, without my consent. It wasn't just unethical, it was a violation. My heart raced as I realized I had something concrete. I could report him, but a report would take days, maybe weeks. I wanted immediate impact, something he couldn't ignore. I glanced at the lobby, where security guards stood by the entrance. A plan started forming. I waited until the end of the day, when the office was quieter but not empty. Greg was in the lobby, chatting with another manager, all smiles. I took a deep breath and walked to my desk, grabbing my phone. I dialed the security desk, keeping my voice low but firm. "I need to report a breach of company policy," I said, my eyes on Greg across the room. The guard asked for details, and I explained how Greg had accessed my files without authorization. I mentioned the Apex deal, how he'd stolen my work during lunch. The guard sounded skeptical but agreed to check it out. I hung up, my hands shaking with adrenaline. This was it, no turning back. I walked toward the lobby, where Greg was still laughing, oblivious. The security team was already moving, their radios crackling. I felt a surge of satisfaction, mixed with nerves. This was about to get real. Complaint. This was just the beginning, but it felt good. Really good. The guards approached Greg, their faces serious. He looked confused, then annoyed, as they asked him to step aside. I stood by the reception desk, watching it unfold. Greg's voice rose, demanding to know what was going on. The guards mentioned a policy violation, and his eyes darted to me. I held his gaze, unflinching. He knew exactly what this was about. The lobby was filling with curious co-workers, whispering among themselves. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't care. This wasn't just about Apex anymore, it was about respect. Greg tried to laugh it off, saying it was a misunderstanding, but the guards weren't budging. They asked for his ID badge, standard procedure for an investigation. His face went pale, the smugness gone. I felt a rush of vindication. He'd underestimated me, and now he was paying for it. The security team escorted Greg to a side room, and the lobby buzzed with speculation. I stayed calm, answering a few questions from coworkers but keeping it vague. "It's about ethics," I said, letting them fill in the blanks. My phone buzzed with a text from a colleague. "Did you really call security on Greg?" I didn't reply, but the word was spreading. I went back to my desk, adrenaline still pumping. I knew this wasn't over. Greg would fight back, and HR would get involved. But for now, I'd made my point. I'd shown him I wasn't invisible, that I wouldn't let him steal my work and walk away. Laura might still think Greg was the star, but the office knew the truth. I opened my laptop, drafting an email to HR to formalize my complaint. This was just the beginning, but it felt good. Really good. The next morning, the office was a different place. Whispers followed me as I walked to my desk. People were talking about the lobby incident, some with admiration, others with caution. I didn't care. I'd done what I had to. Greg wasn't in yet, which wasn't unusual, but it felt ominous. I checked my email and found a meeting request from HR, scheduled for noon. My stomach twisted, but I was ready. I'd spent the night gathering evidence, screenshots of my work, timestamps of Greg's file access, even my original pitch notes. I wasn't going to let him spin this. By mid-morning, word got around that Greg was on a call with corporate. Good. Let him squirm. I focused on my work, replying to a few emails, but my mind was on the HR meeting. I knew Greg would try to turn this around, paint me as the problem. But I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't backing down. The HR meeting was tense, held in a small conference room with frosted glass walls. The HR rep, Susan, was neutral, her face unreadable as she took notes. I laid out my case: the months of work on Apex, Greg's behavior at lunch, the unauthorized file access. I showed her the evidence, every timestamp and email. She nodded, asking clarifying questions, but gave nothing away. I mentioned the security call, explaining it was a last resort. I felt erased, I said, my voice steady despite my nerves. Susan didn't react, just kept writing. I left the meeting drained but hopeful. They'd have to investigate, and the logs didn't lie. Back at my desk, I saw Greg in the hallway, his face tight. He didn't look at me, but I could feel his anger. The office was watching us both, waiting for the next move. I kept my head down, focusing on my work, but I was ready for whatever came next. By lunchtime, the office rumor mill was in overdrive. Some colleagues high-fived me in the break room, calling Greg's stunt slimy. Others avoided me, probably worried about picking sides. I didn't care. I wasn't here to make friends, just to do my job. I checked my phone and saw an email from Laura, forwarded by a coworker. She'd reached out to Greg again, asking for a follow-up meeting. My name wasn't mentioned. It stung, but I wasn't surprised. Greg had done a number on her at lunch, and I'd need to fix that. I drafted a polite email to Laura, clarifying my role in the Apex deal. I kept it professional, no trace of the drama, and hit send. No response came, but I wasn't expecting one yet. I just needed to plant the seed. Back at my desk, I overheard someone say Greg was meeting with the VP. Things were moving fast. That afternoon, Greg finally showed up at my desk. His tie was loose, his eyes bloodshot. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but sharp. I followed him to a quiet corner, bracing myself. He didn't apologize, just launched into a lecture about teamwork and misunderstandings. I cut him off, calmly laying out how he'd stolen my work. His face reddened, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he warned me about burning bridges. I didn't flinch. "You crossed a line, Greg," I said, keeping my voice even. "I just made sure everyone saw it." He stormed off, muttering about HR. I went back to my desk, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. I'd called his bluff, and he knew it. The office was quieter now, the air thick with tension. I focused on my work, but I could feel the tide turning in my favor. By the end of the day, HR sent out a company-wide email about upholding ethical standards. It didn't name names, but everyone knew. I got a few nods from coworkers, silent support. Greg left early, his office dark. I stayed late, finishing up some Apex-related tasks, just in case Laura responded. She didn't, but I wasn't worried. I'd laid the groundwork, and the truth was on my side. Before leaving, I checked the access logs again, making sure I had everything documented. The evidence was ironclad, and HR would have to act. I walked out of the office, the city lights blurring as I replayed the day. Calling security had been a risk, but it had worked. Greg's reputation was on the line now, not mine. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. This wasn't over, but I was in control. The next week was a blur of meetings and whispers. HR called me in again, this time with the VP present. They asked detailed questions about the Apex deal and Greg's actions. I kept my cool, sticking to the facts, showing my evidence. The VP listened intently, his face giving nothing away. I left the meeting feeling cautiously optimistic. Word got around that Greg was under review, his access to certain systems restricted. It wasn't a win yet, but it was progress. I kept working on Apex, refining my pitch in case Laura reached out. My inbox stayed quiet, but I wasn't discouraged. I'd already shown I wasn't invisible, and that was enough for now. Co-workers started treating me differently. More respect, less pity. Even the security guards gave me a nod when I passed the lobby. I'd made my mark. Laura finally responded to my email, a short note asking for a call to clarify roles. I scheduled it immediately, preparing a concise pitch that highlighted my work. The call went better than I'd hoped. She apologized for the confusion at lunch and confirmed I'd be her main contact moving forward. I didn't mention Greg, just focused on the deal. By the end, she was enthusiastic, even referencing my original ideas. I hung up, a grin spreading across my face. I'd won her back, fair and square. Back at the office, Greg's absence was noticeable. Rumors swirled that he was on leave, pending the investigation. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and my work was speaking for itself. I spent the day finalizing Apex's contract, every word a reminder of what I'd fought for. HR's investigation wrapped up a few days later. They called me in to share the outcome. Greg had been reprimanded for ethics violations. He wasn't fired, but his role was adjusted, whatever that meant. I didn't care. He wasn't my problem anymore. The VP pulled me aside after, thanking me for bringing it to light. "We need people like you," he said, and I felt a surge of pride. Apex's deal closed that week, with my name on every document. Laura sent a personal thank you note, praising my dedication. I framed it, a small trophy for my desk. The office dynamic shifted. Co-workers who'd avoided me now stopped by to chat. I wasn't just the guy who called security. I was the guy who stood up. Greg returned the next week, quieter. His office moved to a smaller space. I didn't rub it in. I didn't need to. Looking back, calling security was a gamble, but it paid off. It wasn't just about getting even, it was about taking back what was mine. Greg thought he could erase me, but I made sure everyone saw me. The Apex deal became my stepping stone, earning me a promotion by the end of the quarter. I was now leading my own team, something I'd dreamed of for years. The office still buzzed with the story, but it wasn't just gossip anymore. It was a warning. Don't mess with someone who knows their worth. I kept in touch with Laura, who became a mentor of sorts, offering advice on navigating corporate games. Every time I passed the lobby, the security guards gave me a knowing smile. I'd earned their respect, too. The experience changed me, made me bolder, more aware of my value. I wasn't invisible anymore. Now, months later, I'm in a new rhythm. The Apex deal is thriving, and my team is killing it. Greg's still around, but he keeps his distance, his influence diminished. I've learned to trust my instincts, to speak up when something's wrong. The office feels different now, like I've carved out my own space. I still think about that lunch, the moment I realized Greg was stealing my work. It could have broken me, but it didn't. Instead, it pushed me to fight. Calling security wasn't just about Greg, it was about proving I wouldn't be pushed aside. I've got more clients now, bigger ones, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. The corporate world is brutal, but I'm tougher. And I'll never let anyone take what's mine again. That's my story. Hope it inspires you to stand up, too. The aftermath of the incident taught me a lot about office politics. I started paying closer attention to how people moved, who they talked to, what they didn't say. I wasn't paranoid, just smarter. I began documenting everything, every meeting, every email, every idea. It wasn't just about protecting myself, it was about building a case for my value. The Apex deal had shown me how quickly credit could be stolen, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I also started mentoring a few junior colleagues, sharing what I'd learned. They looked up to me, asked about the lobby incident with wide eyes. I kept it simple: stand up for your work. The office was still a battlefield, but I was better armed now. Even the security team seemed to have my back, giving me a nod every morning. Laura and I built a strong working relationship after that call. She respected my hustle, and I respected her no-nonsense style. We met monthly to review Apex's progress, and she always made a point to credit my ideas. It felt good, like I'd reclaimed my place. I also noticed a shift in how other clients treated me. Word had spread about the Apex deal, and my reputation grew. I was no longer just Greg's guy, I was the one who closed big deals. The VP started looping me into higher-level meetings, a sign I was on the radar. Greg, meanwhile, was a shadow of his former self. He still tried to charm his way through meetings, but people saw through it now. I didn't gloat, but I didn't have to. The work spoke for itself, and I was letting it roar. One unexpected outcome was how the security team became my allies. After the lobby incident, they'd joke with me in the break room, calling me the whistleblower. It was light-hearted, but it meant something. They'd seen plenty of office drama, but they said my move was one for the books. I started to see the office as more than just a workplace, it was a community, with its own rules and loyalties. I made a point to thank the guards, even brought them coffee one morning. They waved it off, but I could tell they appreciated it. That small connection reminded me that standing up wasn't just about me, it rippled out, changed how people saw me. I wasn't just fighting for Apex, I was fighting for respect, and I'd earned it. The promotion came with new challenges, but I was ready. Leading a team meant balancing egos, deadlines, and expectations. I thought about Greg a lot during those first weeks, how he'd led by intimidation. I wanted to be different, firm but fair. I made sure my team knew their work mattered, that I'd back them up. I also kept my door open, literally and figuratively. People started coming to me with ideas, problems, even gossip. I listened, but I stayed focused on the big picture. The Apex deal was still my flagship, but I was building new relationships, new wins. Every contract I signed felt like a brick in my foundation. Greg's stunt had lit a fire in me, and I wasn't letting it go out. I also started thinking about the bigger picture, beyond the office. The corporate world was a game, and I was learning the rules. I took online courses in leadership, read books on negotiation, even attended a few industry conferences. I wanted to be more than a guy who closed deals. I wanted to be a player. Laura introduced me to some of her contacts, expanding my network. I was meeting VPs, directors, people who'd been in the game for decades. They all had stories like mine, moments when they had to fight for their place. It made me feel less alone, like I was part of something bigger. The lobby incident wasn't just a story now, it was my origin story, the moment I decided who I wanted to be. Greg eventually left the company, quietly, a few months later. No big announcement, just an empty office one day. I heard he'd taken a job at a smaller firm, a step down. I didn't feel sorry for him, he'd made his choices. His departure was a relief, but it didn't change my focus. I was too busy building my team, chasing new clients, and proving myself. The office gossip died down, replaced by talk of new projects and deals. I was at the center of it now, not just a bystander. My team respected me, and I made sure they felt valued. I'd learned from Greg's mistakes. Leadership wasn't about stealing credit, it was about lifting others up. I was still learning, but I was getting there. So that's my story, from a lunch that almost broke me to a moment that defined me. I hope it inspires you to stand up, speak out, and take what's yours. The corporate world can be a jungle, but you can be the one who tames it. I'm still here, still fighting, still winning. And I'm not done yet. If you loved this story, hit that subscribe button to catch more real talk from the corporate trenches. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy ride. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this.